roads are windy.
Welcome to the show, Ash. I'm really excited to talk to you today, and I cannot wait to see what comes through our conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and also very curious what's going to come out.
Yes. So before we begin, would you like to lead us on an invocation?
Yeah, I would love to. So I just want to take a moment. I like to do this before any time that I'm in connection with other people. It's just to feel into the space that we're in right now and being able to feel into our bodies and sort of the weight of our bodies in this space and this time. And just noticing sensations, buzzing, anything that's coming up in our bodies, in these human vessels that we get to inhabit for a very short time. And just finding deep, deep gratitude for being here, for inhabiting these bodies, for being on this journey that we're in right now. Life is so, so precious, and just giving a moment to be present in that. I just invite you, if it feels available, to take a breath or find a breath. And if it's not, it's okay too. And just start to come back into this space. I like to say after that, we've arrived. Now we're here.
I love it. Thank you for that. Thank you. So, can you tell us, who are your lineages? Where do you come from?
Yeah. So my ancestors are from West Africa, in Togo and Benin, and then also in Mexico, indigenous tribes in Mexico. And then also European. So I have family in Sicily, from Sicily, in France. So a lot of different places.
Wow, that's a really cool mix. I feel like I say that with everyone, but it is cool. It's cool to see where everyone's from, because you can't tell just on the surface of looking at people. You know, it's like, I never would have known these things. It's cool. And then where do you live now, and who are the people of that land?
Yeah, so I live in Eugene, Oregon, on Kayaput territory. I am a visitor here. And it's a practice that I always invite the Kayaput people, ancestors, into the work that I do, whether it's a meeting, a Zoom call, like they're here, and I welcome them to come and offer guidance, and also to ask for permission to be here. I feel like it's a personal practice that I like to do, and just take a moment to acknowledge their presence. So yeah.
Love that. So you are a death walker and spirit medium, which is, just thinking about this, I'm like, I think about death a lot. My friends think about death a lot, and probably a lot of people think about death a lot, but somehow it's not something it's glorified. Like, violence and killing are glorified in our society, but actual like death care and death awareness of like death as this portal is not part of our society, really. It's kind of this like avoid it. I mean, you read any like even like any supplement ad, and it sounds like you're gonna live forever if you take this freaking supplement. Like, no, y'all gonna die. Everyone's gonna die. Yeah, everybody. So like I love it. So what, when did this connection, or like, when did you begin to really understand and accept yourself as a death walker? And what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much in what you're saying that I'm like, yes. So much I could speak to. So the journey of me becoming a death walker, and the reason that I use death walker, because some people are like, why wouldn't you just say death doula? And I should say that I ascribe as someone who is non-binary. My pronouns are they, he. So I don't feel comfortable with the gendering of death doula and what that means. And so for me, death walking is also more appropriate in the people that I walk with from all different backgrounds, you know, the trans community, the queer community, just all of my people. So, and I also like the idea of walking because that's really what I'm doing. I'm not doing much. I'm actually holding a lot and walking with. And so that's important for me. And how that came about was by way of the weirdest circumstances. Like, I don't think I would have said I would do this work, or even thought about doing this work at all. About a year and a half ago, I was severely ill, actually. I had been in like optimum health my whole life. I've never been like sick. I would never get a cold. Like, I just was someone who was always really healthy and took care of myself. I was actually gearing up to do a bike-a-thon and like bike pack across the country. And I was so excited about it. And I became really ill like overnight. I had a series of weird things happening with my body that I couldn't explain. And doctors really had no answer. Their answers were very much, which is a whole other topic, but very dismissive and very much like, it's in your head, do yoga. You know, I remember being like, nah, like I do yoga and it's still here, right? Because I was really into my practices and my rituals then too, you know, and taking care of myself. So I thought that was really interesting that they were trying to give me a lot of health advice as far as drink this smoothie or, you know, practice meditation. And I thought, well, no, I already do this. So something's going on, you know? And it got worse as time went on. My body started to really fall apart. And what would happen is I would be standing and all of a sudden I would get like these racing feelings of like I was getting a heart attack. And it was really, really scary. My heart would speed up so fast that my throat would close and I couldn't breathe. And I would just be standing in like Target or some store and this would happen. And I would just get so like I just was going to faint. And so I would leave all my stuff and just walk out and just sit in my car and just cry because I didn't know what was happening. And I remember a lot of doctors saying like, well, maybe you're just anxious. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling anxious though. Like I feel very zen, like very calm. Like I can see how that could happen for some people, but it's not just something's going on. So after about 7 months, I went from being able to stand and run and walk and all this stuff to being in a wheelchair, being bedbound. And I had a port that went to my heart into my chest. And I had IVs that I had given to me every other day with a nurse who would come to our house and provide IV treatment. And that was the only way that I could stand up without having these attacks. So that experience really changed me. When your health and this body starts to do something different than what you want it to do, and starts to break down, there's like, talk about the shadows, the the fears, the everything that's sort of like sitting in there, just like emerging. And I remember being at a point where I had collapsed. It was a really scary collapse where I was doing these like jerking seizures at the end, which was terrifying. And I remember looking up at my partner and it's like still gives me like tears because I remember looking at her face and being like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night. And I just remember feeling so grateful that like she was in my life. Like that's all I could I was just so grateful. And I went to bed and the next day we had to go to the emergency room because I couldn't stand without falling over. And it was in that period that I realized very like auspiciously that I was supposed to do this work. I went to bed that following night and I had what I now know as a visitation. And my grandmother had been old, but I didn't know that she was dying or sick or anything like that. Like last time I talked with her, she was fine. And she came to me in my dream And how she came to me is I saw this vision of like, I was in the desert and the sky was like filled with these stars. And I remember being like, wow, like, where am I? And all around me were my ancestors, and they were like digging in the sand, and they kept digging, and they were like, come on, you must dig with us. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know what's going on, but like, I'll do it. And we're digging in the sand, and we're taking out these like glass balls that have all of this color in them. I have no idea. I'm just like, okay. And we keep doing it. And they're like, she's coming. She's coming. You're going to help her come through. And I'm like, I am. And all of a sudden, the spirit of my grandmother came through the sky. And I just remember crying and crying. And she said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to help me, but you're going to help other people do this. And I was like, what? Like, I don't understand this. And I woke up and I was crying. And I got a phone call later that day that my grandmother had died. And she had crossed over that night. I know, I still get chills. Like, it's just... I couldn't, like, what? How could you even explain that? And I knew it was her soul. So that was the long answer to your question of how I was sort of initiated into doing this work. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm just like, people can't see, they're listening. I'm like jaw on the floor over here. Like, wow, that's so wild. So there's so much, one thing, first things first, I guess. I don't know. Is it first? It's such a silly saying, but did you get better? I mean, you look well, but I know looks don't always show the whole story. So what happened with the sickness? And did you find out what it was, and what's happened since then?
Yeah. So this is also part of this wild journey, which I've come to find out later. But when I had the visitation, I collapsed. There was others events that came also at the same time that were just, it was wild. And after that, I started to hear, what can happen sometimes, and what I've learned from the spirit world is that when someone close to us dies, it can open up this portal, and it becomes like the veil becomes thinner for us to connect with loved ones, with spirit. And what had happened was that my grandmother opened up this portal that kind of had always been there, but it's something that I was like, I don't know, like, I'm making that up, or I don't know, I can't feel that. Like, what is that really? And instead she was like right here, and I could hear her talking to me. I could hear her guidance. And I said, and I remembered having a conversation with her, like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, my body is breaking down, Grandma. Like, I'm scared, like, I don't know what to do. There's no more options for me as far as medically goes. And I don't want to live this way. And my grandmother said, open up to your gifts and we will help you heal. And here's the skeptic in me. I was like, yeah, that's really pretty. But like, listen, I've been through 9 months of treatment. I've been through so many doctors. I've been through surgeries. Like, I was nauseated all the time. I wasn't eating. I dropped 30 pounds. Like, I was not well. I had no energy. I couldn't talk like I am right now with you. I had no breath. I would get out of breath and just stop talking. And she said, trust me. And I said, okay, what else do I have to trust you? So I said, okay, let's see what happens this month. Let's just see what happens for a month. So I started diving into the mediumship work, and I started saying yes. And I started just opening up my life to this calling. And every day that I went to bed and got up in the morning, I felt a little bit better, and a little bit better, and a little bit better. And they were small little things, but I noticed them. My energy levels were rising. And then at some point, I think it was about a month in, something told me, which I now know is my guides. They said, you don't need IVs anymore. Stop. And I was like, and my doctor, my whole medical team was like, no, I don't think so. Like, I don't think that's a good idea. So there's a period where I had to wait, but I assured them, like, I don't need treatment anymore. Like, I'm done. And they were like, And so, I mean, this is not integrated at all in the medical care system. So I said, I know I'm going to be okay. And I stopped my own IVs. At that point, I was putting needles in my chest and doing my own IVs every day. So I stopped that completely. And all of my symptoms started to go away. Like all of the things started to just leave my body. And like I said, every day I just got better and I couldn't explain it. My partner was like amazed. But there was like no medical answer for how I could go from where I had been to where I am now. And today I don't have IVs. I still have a chronic illness, but it's managed and it's not at all as extreme as it was. I'm a whole different person. I can run, I can bike, I can hike. I'm retraining my body right now in physical therapy. So yeah, it's pretty miraculous. And what they said just held true. My grandmother said I would heal, and I 100% did. And the more that I do this work in mediumship, also, I notice the more healings I receive even after a session. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story. This is awesome. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through all that, but like the fact that you're here now and with this opened up and you've accepted it and cultivated it, and like this is so powerful. Your story is so powerful. And what I'm curious, when you asked your grandma, was your grandma already passed when you asked her about that, or was she still alive? Or it's like, what was that like?
Yeah, she had already passed when she had crossed over. She had crossed over, and that's when I began to heal. And that's when our conversations were just more on the regular. And it's something I had, like, I talked to, my ancestors and my grandma, they are right here. Like I can feel them. I just can feel them. And so I talk to them. And I think sometimes that can get confusing. People are like, wait a minute. So they're like, you see them, or like, how does that happen? And what I see is like an image in my mind, kind of like when we go to bed and we have a dream and our eyes are closed, but we see images. It's the same thing for me. Just during the daytime, I see her as an image in my mind, and she'll just talk to me. And during that whole period, she was just assuring me that, like, I know this doesn't make sense, but it's not about that. You have to trust, like, we're going to help you. And I felt her, but I also felt other guides around me helping my body heal. And there was something very specific. I'm not sure why, but something very specific about sleeping time. Like when I went to bed, I felt their hands like all on me while I was sleeping and working on me. And then I would wake up and I would feel like amazing. Like I would feel so good. So that to me makes a lot of sense too in the unconscious realm, because that's a time where I've experienced spirit can come in a lot easier when our brain waves are so low, and help in the healing process.
Wow. I love that. Yeah. I have this year started working with dreams a lot too. And I'm blown away. I'm like, wow, why was I so lazy? First, that was literally, it was only laziness that was preventing me from doing dream work. But I'm like, this is our own most powerful healing tool. It's amazing. Or not, maybe not most powerful, but very powerful. So you had this awareness, like, sounds like you kind of had some level of awareness that you had mediumship gifts before this all started happening. Is that the case? And like, how did you know? And what are your like thoughts and feelings around that before you accepted them?
Yeah. That's a great question. And yeah, it's funny. I felt this come up and I was like, I don't know if you want to hear about this, but prior, actually, yeah, so this is like the story that I don't tell often, but prior to me getting ill, actually a few months prior, my partner and I went on a mushroom trip, a very, very deep mushroom trip with psychedelic mushrooms in the woods. And in this trip, my intention was to ask the ancestors to come through and to guide me into why I'm here. Felt very lost. I felt like I didn't know why I was here. I know. And I was confused. I was like, I'm lost. Like, I don't know what my path is. And I also don't like, are you all here? Like, I don't know. And we made this threshold in the woods with these flowers and like in this beautiful setting. And we crossed over, and then we journeyed into the woods, and it was the most powerful experience of my life. And my ancestors made it very clear that they were here. And they showed me through, I mean, I had ancestors that were trees that were coming through talking to me. I had ancestors from my Native American background who were like in complete headdress talking to me. And it was like as real as I'm talking to you. And then I had ancestors, who had crossed over. And that is actually what really confirmed that I had some ability and that had been in the family. Because I was at one point we were coming to the close of our trip, and I was like, well, that's enough. Like, I feel like, yeah, I got what I needed. Like, I think I'm good. Like, it's like, it was a lot. And, we got in the car, and I don't know what it was about sitting in the car, but we were sitting in the car, and all of a sudden I looked at this, I had this sticker of a mushroom, and I looked at this sticker of a mushroom on my dashboard, and I couldn't look away, and it pulled me. It's all I can say. And what I now know in the work I do, this is called trance. And I was pulled into this trance, and my grandfather, who had passed now 20 years ago, and we were really close, he came through, and he showed me the other side, and he showed me what was possible over there. And then he said, Ash, he said, you don't need mushrooms to be able to see this. You have a gift. And I said, what? And he said, you'll be able to communicate. This is what you're here to do. Like, you'll be in these realms. You'll be able to do this, and you won't need psychedelics, which is not part of your soul. And I was like, okay, what? And so in that experience with him, which was like an hour-long trip in the realm with him, where he was showing me dimensions and these colors of other dimensions that were just mind-blowing to me. Like, I had never experienced it. And then he was showing me what he had learned with his abilities on the other side. And this is a man who was not into mediumship or like none of that. He was a male post office man, and he went to church every day, and he was a born again Baptist. And so it was in the war. So he was very much like regimented. And he had totally evolved and was, showing me around that space. So honestly, that was the catalyst. And after that experience, you would have thought that I went right into it. And I completely was so scared. I was so scared. I was freaked out because I knew on some deep level that if I actually went into this all the way and shared this, my whole life was going to change. And I wasn't ready for that. And then 3 months later, I was severely ill. And I don't think there's any mystery with that for me.
I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, that is wild. So then I love that you were seeing the colors and the different dimensions and stuff. And I mean, everyone's got to be curious in the whole world about like what happens when we die. And what have you learned about that, from your grandfather and that experience, and from just working as a medium now?
Yeah, so much more that I've ever realized and imagined. And I'm always learning more. Like, I think that's another misconception. People are like, well, you must know all the answers. I'm like, no, like I don't get revealed all the things. And it feels like almost too big. Like it's so many paradoxes is what I constantly am shown. And so many different layers and dimensions. But what I have learned thus far is that when we die, it is our physical body that dies. It is not our consciousness, our energetic being that dies. And I don't know if I would have even been able to say that before all of this happened. I would have been like, I don't know, maybe we just like disappear. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not clear. But what I've seen in sessions through spirits that are crossed over is that they show me so many things that are going on the other side. And the other side being actually on top of where we are right now. And I think that's always interesting. People are like, well, where is it? Like far off into the universe? Like there may be areas that are far off into the universe, but when spirits come, they're always right here. They're always on this. It's just like another dimension. It's almost like if we could put an X-ray or something and see through and be like, oh my God, there's all these people here. And there's all these layers, like energetic, moving layers. And I think that's the beauty about psychedelics that I found, is that it's extremely close to the experience that I experience when I'm channeling and when I'm in session with people and having a reading. Very similar. The things that are vibrating, the patterns, the things that are moving and shifting, it's actually always like that. But we are not attuned to it all the time, especially being in a concrete world where things are this and like, that's it. And there's no like kind of normalcy about seeing things more as they are. And so, yeah, from spirit, I've just learned a lot that not only do we leave these physical bodies, but we actually grow on the other side, which I find so very interesting and amazing. I didn't know this, but spirits multiple times have showed me that if they had difficult times here in the physical world, when they go to the other side, they have the opportunity to work and grow on their soul in those ways that they have either harmed others or impacted others, or even not been good to themselves in some way. And I find that just like incredible. And they also show me that there's this like expansiveness, total expansiveness in their own soul and being. And I like to think about it like when they come to channel through me for their loved one, they are also in about 10,000 other different places at the same time, because time isn't a thing. It doesn't exist. It's like a construct of here. And so that I've learned from them too. And they also too, one thing I think is really important is that I think it's important to know for the people who are left behind here, who see their loved ones going through a lot of suffering and pain in their death leading up, especially the last like moments or hours of their death, when things can be kind of intense and they can look from our physical eyes pretty bad. What spirit has showed me, which I think is astounding, is that they can come out of their bodies way before. And so they're not physically experiencing that pain anymore. And a lot of the people that come to me are so steeped in the grief and the pain of being like, but I remember them in this pain, and I'm just going to like loop it in my mind because that's the last thing I remember of them. And they always come through and they tell me like, I want to relieve you of that grief and that pain because I was not in that body. I was actually in the room with you looking at my body myself. And that to me is just like, so yeah, I've learned a lot. They're always teaching me.
Okay, so when are you making your own podcast? Because I could just listen to you like literally all day. Like this is amazing.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I've thought about a podcast, but I'm like, who would listen? Because I just sound like I'm like going on.
Sign me up. You got at least one download per episode over here. I think my whole team,
awesome.
The whole Earthspeak team, they would be so into it. It's amazing. And I just, you know, it's like each thing you share brings so many more questions. It like brings clarity and yet more questions and curiosity. It's just endless. It's so cool. And you know, there is, I love that you brought up about how people remember their loved ones dying in this pain and they're just looping that. And just for someone like you to be able to claim your gifts and then share them and help release, like liberate someone from that looping and that like guilt or grief or whatever, or like, I don't know, all the emotions caught up in that. That's amazing, because then that opens them up perhaps to connect with their loved ones in a different way now, instead of just remembering this loop of pain. Like, tell me about what, I got two questions. I got like 2,000 questions, but I got two questions here. One, does pretty much everyone cry when you have a session with them for like mediumship? And then two, how does connecting with these spirits on the other side, you know, when you're doing mediumship sessions, what kind of stuff comes through for people? Like, what is there like a theme to the messages or information? And how does that really, I'm just so curious, like how our ancestors and our loved ones on the other side see us in a whole new light, and what are they bringing through or trying to get us to see that we're sometimes blind to?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many great questions. And I also want to say that I move around a lot, and that's because I'm channeling and spirits are trying to come through and be able to communicate. I ask my guides to come through and like relay information. So if I'm hopping around, that's what's going on. I'm trying to listen to all that's coming through. So, yeah, the first question you asked about crying, I feel like, yes, everyone cries during the session. I think I've had one session where someone didn't cry, but then they told me afterwards they felt like they couldn't, because that was kind of their role in life, to hold back emotions. And so that was interesting, but what's interesting is I could even feel that client. So when I'm channeling in a session, I can feel the emotions of not only a spirit, but I can feel the emotions of the person I'm reading for. And it's intense. So yeah, so that's really, part of the experience. I think a lot of emotions are released, sometimes emotions that have never been able to be released. The biggest honor is being able to be that channel and that vessel for that person to get that healing that they most need. And I never know what that healing is for that person. And that's what's so amazing, is that when I am channeling, I am just open. I clear my thoughts, my emotions, everything out. You know, if I flick someone off this morning, I clear that out. You know, I have to be like a totally clear channel to be able to have them come through. And spirit will have me come through. And right away, the thing that they want to go for first is the deepest pain in that person. And I find that so fascinating every time. And then at the end, the person's like, that's the one thing that's why I wanted to meet with you, Ash, because of this one thing. Like I wanted to know if they were okay, you know? And I think as far as like that being a theme, I feel like that's a huge one. I want to know, are they okay? Are they okay wherever they are? Also, yeah, were they in pain? Of regret. I get a lot of regret, like woulda, coulda, shoulda. I wanted to be there. I should have picked up the phone. I should have made that trip. And what I feel from spirit, you know, which feels like in a pattern at this point, is that there's no regrets. There's no, like, it is what it was and it's perfect. It's okay. Like they are actually in such an amazing place that they're not trapped up in the human worries and the anxieties and the fears and all that. They're just not weighed by that anymore. So what they want most for us is to be in love. And I know that sounds cliche, or it sounds like, oh yeah, be in love. But it's this vibration of healing is what I feel them coming through in. And their wish is for us to be able to be here in our fullest sense of self, in our fullest sense of our soul, and to fully inhabit and experience and live here and be here. Because what they always show me is this, they show me this energetic timeline, and it kind of spans out across the universe. And in that middle of that timeline is our time on Earth. it's like that small, like it's like a blip on this like never ending time of existence. And I find that really interesting and like, oh my gosh, right. This isn't the end all be all. This is an experience in an infinite universe of so many other experiences and lives that we go on living in different forms. Like this is just a small experience. So that's something that they always tell me that's really important to, if we're going to be here, be really here. And people say, well, it's really hard sometimes to be here. You know, look at the things that are happening in the world right now. Climate collapse, you know, my black brothers and sisters and siblings and people getting killed by police. I mean, this is a heavy place to be. And it is what they have told me, the most challenging realm to be in, the most challenging, because through all of these heavy things and obstacles and intensities and devastations, to still feel and receive love is like the biggest thing here. And you can feel the chills, right? The chills moving through you, and that spirit coming through and validating that this is truth. This is from them, you know? And so that's something that they always transmit, is that when hard things are happening, and they will continue to be because we are in this realm, and they may continue to get harder here as time progresses. You know, that's something I've heard lately, which feels hard to say. And it feels like it's true, is that what they show me is allow these things to come through you and then move them out, and come through you and move them out, and come through you and move them out. And this is the motion they always give me. They say, think of yourself like a cheesecloth, and all these things are coming through, and then let them drain out by way of whatever that is for you. Meditation, walking, running, breathing, whatever it is that helps you breathe it out. Because the things that happen is these things get stuck in these physical vessels, these bodies, and they turn into all sorts of things, as we know, in the body, you know, that leads to a lot of different illnesses or sicknesses, or just even stagnation, right? Depression, things where our souls are just heavy and we don't have anything left, right, to give, to expand into. So those are some things that spirit has shared with me that I feel is epically huge. Yeah, there's so much more I could say, but I'm like, I'll stop there because I can just keep going. But yeah.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I really feel that. I want to send a shout out to all the people crying right now, just because I bet there's a lot moving through, like what you've shared. You know, it was really powerful stuff, and I love that. I mean, I really feel that too. Of like, if you can, I feel like this is what my guides have always been trying to get me to understand and to help people with as well. And I'm not as far as I know, I've like talked with people's ancestors who have come into a session, but I'm not like specifically working as a medium. And I'm like, I think I know what I'm doing. And I try to get information to validate to them who it is. And they're like, oh yeah, that's who it is. But it's like very, you know, this isn't my common thing. But that same thing, it's like this message just to reflect that to you and to like echo this for the listener. It's like to be able to be in that vibration of love despite all of the nutsness of the world. Like that feels yes. Like that it doesn't, there's no word for it. It just is. That's it.
Yes, because that is the continuation of our souls. Yeah, that is the continuation of our souls, is what they make me feel like. We are from this place where love is booming all the time. So of course, it's the biggest challenge to be here, and to feel that love, even throughout these experiences, is something we return back into, you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge. There's no short of challenges. Oh my gosh. We're like, I like to think of it as like my little spirit before coming to Earth in this life was like, yeah, let's ride this roller coaster. You know?
Yeah, that's what's wild too, is I get a lot of that from spirit of like, actually, you chose to be here during this time. And when I tell people that, they're like, ah, what? Wait a minute, Ash. I'm like, that's not me. Like, that's what I hear coming through. And I think about my own soul and what's happening in the world in this time, in this decade. And I think, oh yeah, I know on some deep level, my soul was like, yep, I can be here during this. Even though my human self is like, I don't know, it's too much. I know it. Yeah.
Right. This is the perfect mix of weirdness, hardness, miracles, magic, evolution, expansion. Like, just it's a trip. And yeah. Something I'm just gonna ask you questions about things that I've come across from the spirit world and see what you got to say about them here. So
yes.
Do you do any psychopomp work of like helping stuck spirits cross over? And is that a thing you come across, as like spirits who somehow got lost in the in-between and didn't quite fully cross over? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have experience with that. And I think only because I'm not open to it. Like, it's not something that I feel. It's wild when you get around. There's so many mediums for so many different things. And I have like big groups that we gather and we talk about all the work we do and things. And it's so fascinating because there are folks that I know who work with people who have, who transitioned and are like in a place and they don't want to leave. And in my experiences, the only thing that I've had, I've not had spirits that are stuck around. I get asked to come to houses like, I got asked to come to a house where someone had died tragically and they were feeling like there was a presence in the house and they were kind of freaked out by it. They didn't really know like what's going on. And I was only given that they had died tragically. And I realized that I didn't even know who it was, but I could feel as soon as I got in the house that she was there. It was a woman. And I could feel that I was terrified. My whole body was terrified. Like I felt like what I did when I was a kid and the like spirits used to come and sit on my bed in my bedroom and I could feel them like sitting on my feet. And I'm like, I had that same feeling come over me. Like I was a little kid again. And I thought, oh gosh, what is going on? And it was specifically in the basement, in this like dark basement. It's like such a scary movie, but that's not actually, it's just like where no one goes, basically. And so I went down there and I gathered that she herself, her soul was not actually there. She was actually on the other side in a good place. But because of the way she died was so tragic in a fire, like the whole house lit on fire and she was trapped inside. That energy pattern is stuck in that house and doesn't go anywhere. And that happens with energy patterns you and I make, anyone makes. Someone fights in a room and then you walk into a room and you're like, ooh, I feel like something weird in here. Like I feel grumpy or grouchy. Like all of those things are really real. And I find it, especially in tragic situations and in places, they need to be like cleared out and the energy needs to be moved. And also what she wanted was her soul to be acknowledged and honored, that she did live, that she was here, that something did happen here. And so the owners are going to put like something in memory of her. But I find that really interesting because I think the feeling was that she was there in the house. And when I tuned in, she was not there. She was visiting, like she was around, but she wasn't stuck there. I do believe that there are different souls going through different things, and some are wanting to stay close to earth and their loved ones here, and that's a choice. And I do believe that there are vibrations that are lower, and that things that they've done in here, whether it be murder or something really intense or abuse of any kind, it's like a whole different realm. And I know that because of people who've come to me, who've had people who have done really, really intense acts of violence. They aren't allowed to talk to me. And and how they are brought through is I actually see my guides and they're holding them back, and my guides speak for them. And then what they told me on this one occasion with this client was that their uncle basically was in a rehabilitation phase with his soul. And so he was only allowed to kind of come through in a very safe way through me to this person, until he had kind of like worked through the traumas that his soul has experienced that led him to be the way that he was and make the actions he did on the earth. So that's what I've experienced, but I have never come across like stuck souls. And I'm sure there's like people who work with souls that are confused or maybe are gone too sudden. That can happen. Souls leave the earth too suddenly or through a tragic way, and they kind of are confused as to like what's going on and maybe wanting to return back, and they can't. So
wow, these things that nobody teaches. I mean, maybe someone does, maybe just not. Nobody taught me, growing up, like, here's what to do if you die tragically and you're a stuck soul. If you don't know what's happening, how to recognize you're dead so you could move on. Like, it'd be cool if we got that training, right?
Yeah, I will say it's pretty rare. It doesn't happen a lot. But when it does, yeah, it would be great to have guidance. And I will say that our guides do help us when we're on that side if someone was stuck. But even as a soul, you have the choice of being able to listen to them or to be like, no, I want to go back. I want to go back. So yeah, but I agree. I think these things like should be talked about and how to navigate the other side. Right.
Right. I imagine for the most part, it's pretty natural. We know what to do, almost every account I've heard of people, near death experiences and such it just was, they just knew it was, and it felt good. It wasn't like scary or confusing. And, wow. So what about the person who's listening, who's sensing that their ancestors or loved ones on the other side are around, but they're not sure? And like, how can they maybe connect more with them and begin to trust that what they're sensing is real? And actually, what can that relationship look like? What kind of, maybe for both sides, not just one way, what can their, loved ones and guides and helpers do for them, but like, how can they help their loved ones and guides as well? Like what does this look like to you?
Yeah, such a good question. I get this a lot. And I think there's so many different ways. And I'll speak from the deceased side first. Like if we have loved ones that are crossed over and we're maybe feeling their presence, but we're not sure, it's usually always we are. The brain loves to get in the way, and the brain loves to logistically explain ourselves out of what we're feeling. And that's normal. The brain does that. We're in a human body. That's what the brain is amazing at, right? Keeping us safe and keeping us contained. What I find helpful when people are wanting to connect with their loved ones on the other side and they're not sure is being able to be still. And you can say meditation or you can just say stillness practice, like whatever that is for you. And the reason that I say that is not to like, I want to elevate and like zen myself out. It's more like, it's more grounded than that. It's you're wanting to really feel into your own energy, how you feel. Like, what do you feel like energetically? And you kind of want to get a sense of that. Like, what is my baseline for my energetic field? And you just find that by sitting, whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I do it every day, because over time you'll start to sense your energy. And then what I would say is ask at some point when you're like, okay, I know how I feel when something comes in. And you can also test this out by in your everyday life. When you have your energy field, you'll know, because when someone comes into you and it's like they have a negative energy, you're like, whoa, Like, no. Or they feel violent when they're walking by, or you get a weird feeling, or they feel loving. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just feel so loving. Like you'll be able to see like, okay, I can sense where I'm at today. Right. And then the next step I say would be, once you feel that, when you're in meditation and you're finding you're like feeling kind of grounded into your own energy, ask your loved one who has crossed over to step closer to you. And what you'll find is a subtle energy difference that will get stronger the more that you practice. I think some people are like, well, it should just happen, and it's like, no, like it takes, like I practice, like it takes training. And it's the same thing for our loved ones on the other side. They are learning skills that some of them have never used before to be able to communicate to us and come and have us feel them, right? Or in how to influence energetically a bird or a butterfly to be able to come close to us. That is a lot of work. And most people don't think about the other side and the amount of energy and training that they're learning and honing to be able to connect with us also. So that's something to practice and play with. And I guarantee you, after continual practice of that, you'll be able to feel, you might feel like a sensation. You might feel hot. You might feel like something on your left, like almost like someone's standing there, but then you open your eyes and no one's there. That's them. And you can deepen that practice as you go. And I also love this practice. I was with someone in a reading before, and their loved one brought up the fact that he was telling me how his daughter made him a cup of coffee every morning at the table, even though he physically wasn't there anymore, and how much he loved sitting with her. And it's these little practices that we create with our loved ones. And they're always around us, but you can feel them draw closer when you do these things that either they loved in the physical world or that you just want to incorporate them into. I cook with my grandma all the time. She was an amazing cook. And I get her in the kitchen. I play music that she used to play. And I'm like, all right, grandma, let's get cooking. We make up a dish. And I swear, most of the time it's so good. It's because she's right there with me being like, nope, too much. Well, no, but too much salt. I'm like, okay. But it's amazing if we incorporate them as if they are here because they are, that draws them so much closer. And yeah, learning to trust yourself when you're feeling something is a huge thing too. And not questioning that, So in the beginning, I used to track, all the things that I would feel or experience. And it sounds cheesy, but it was really helpful to be like, this is real. This is happening. There is something going on here, That's what I would say as a starting point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I love that you brought up the coffee, because I was going to ask about offerings, because, in my own practices, I've learned from teachers and just from my own intuitive connection with, and understandings. For me, I'm very clairvoyant and then claircognizant, where I just get the information just all of a sudden it's in my head. And then I also can see. And so it's my understanding that offerings aren't there. We would at least for me, it's not about, this is something I'm obligated to do, or like I have to earn some sort of trust or something. It's like, no, actually for me, the act and then the actual physical material of an offering, whether it's a song or a plate of food or a cup of coffee, actually that energy from the act and from the object itself, if it is an object, helps the spirit worlds connect closer to us. And that's what I've understood. So I love that you brought up that. And I'm wondering if you have other experiences or insights on offerings as that. I mean, I don't feel like they're necessary, because I go long periods sometimes without making any offerings and I'm still very connected, but then I make it and I'm like, whoa, it's like supercharged. I'm like, whoa, why did I stop doing this for like 2 weeks or a month or whatever?
Yes. And that's beautiful. Like, I think what I hear from spirits from the other side is that, so even just having the thought is as if you did it energetically on the other side. So when you do that, just having the thought to them, they're like elated, like just grateful and beaming with love. And then when you actually do it, it's like another layer of love and connection and drawing them closer. And you don't ever have to do it when you don't organically feel like it. I think there used to be this, at least when I was like kind of in the beginning years of the spirituality community, I felt like I had to like, all right, put the plate out, put the thing out and make sure the thing, and then the candle. And then it just felt like so repetitive, but I actually wasn't feeling it. Like I was just doing it to be able to, like you said, appease the ancestors or do well, or like this is how it's going to work. And I don't feel that at all now. I feel very much it's in the subtleties, the thoughts. I bought these flowers and I thought of my grandmother and I put them on my table. I had a cup of tea and I was like, hey, grandpa, what's up? It's just these little moments of checking in when it feels alive for you. And that's usually when they're trying to connect with you, like when they're closest to you, you'll have this thought to do something. It's like, cause they're right there, and I think that is most helpful. So yeah, I don't have any like, hard and fast, or like, any things that I feel like I did in the past that I felt like I had to do. It's just really intuitive. And when things come into your mind, it's for a reason. I think people are like, well, if it's in my mind, then it's my head. But spirit comes through us because we are, creatures who use their brains. They impress upon our minds to be able to communicate with us. So the mind isn't inherently a bad thing. It's just being able to trust what's coming through, and you'll know it because you'll feel, it'll feel loving. It'll feel good. If anything is coming in that feels negative or heavy or hard or scary, that's fear, and that's the mind coming in, but, yeah, that's what I find helpful, and just really honoring the ancestors in the ways that feel good for you. And in the ways that just feel most authentic and alive, It could be a bike ride. I know people who go on bike rides and think of their loved ones. I'm going to bike a couple miles for you, and I'm just like, that's awesome, like, cause energetically they're like, it's building. They're right there with you. So yeah.
I like that you've got me pictured of like this whole big soul family of all of us just loving on each other throughout dimensions.
Yes, it's so much of that too. I wish, if there's one thing I could wish that people could feel, that I feel all the time, it's just a huge family around me. It's around everyone. No one is without anyone. I think that's something, a fear that has come up with someone that I love very much. And they said, well, what if no one's around me? What if I'm by myself? And I've seen so many beings around every single person. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you have so many beings who love you around you. And I'm sure you experience that with the ancestral work. Like, it's wide and it's vast.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I feel like they're always like, hey, get in touch with us. Like, why aren't you? Like, we're here. Just, hey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Do you mostly channel or medium? Are you mostly a medium for ancestors and spirit guides, or are there other types of spirit beings that you come across in your travels, adventures?
Yeah. Well, I mostly channel right now just deceased, like the folks who have crossed over in someone's physical life. I do interact with my own ancestors, and occasionally what's been happening, which is an interesting trend, like there'll be these times, I don't know if it's in the stars, I don't know, but people's ancestors will actually come in before the session. And then the person they'll bring forward the person who's deceased. And that is profound. I have not had that happen, but recently it's happened a few times. And what is interesting, even more so, is that I usually am like, have you been, they're telling me that you've been working on a lot of ancestral work, yourself right now, specifically. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So they're coming in because they're in the psychic field, and they're like, they're like diving in deep and like doing ancestral trees and all this stuff. And so of course they're coming in first to validate their presence and that they know about all the ways that the person is like discovering them. But yeah, I mostly work with people who have lost someone in this physical realm. And that's really because I give like very clear validation and unique things that only that person and that spirit would know. It's harder for me to give validations with ancestors that have crossed over. I can, and sometimes it does, like they know a lot about the person who is in the physical realm still that they can say. But it just makes it a little bit harder sometimes to be able to, like, if they're looking for evidence of life or how they were or, you know, what they did. But I will say that they're a part of my work. They help me get everyone in the room is what I like to call it. And then they hold the space around them. And can validate their own presence in people's lives. But yeah, that's mainly who I'm channeling these days. And as far as like strange beings or anything that's come in, I haven't had strange beings, but I've had interesting, like, usually people want to come in for sessions and they want to know about the person, and they want validations of the person's life, how they died, like all of these things, and if they're okay. What has happened is that I had a client where they showed me the person who was wanting the reading. They had already heard from so many different mediums about this person, and they really wanted to know about what they're doing now on the other side, like what's been happening. And so we were able to go into that, and I was able to see what role they had on the other side. And that was pretty amazing. I got to see that they were welcoming young children who had crossed over as children to the other side and kind of played a mentor towards them. And I thought that was amazing. So that's something that kind of, I have no idea about, that is kind of strange and unusual and awesome. Yeah. So I'd like to do more of that, to figure out like what roles do we take and what are we doing on the other side? Because it's a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. And, you know, when you're talking about how like on the other side, they can be occupying, 10,000 different dimensions. It's, that's really, it feels like when I watch those shows about the universe and they're like, well, there could be infinite possibility, infinite multiverses. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
Oh my God. Like my brain melts and I love
Yes.
it. And, I guess it's always been a question or a fascination of mine of like, when we die and our consciousness or spirit carries forward, and, like even personally, I've connected with specific people who have died on the other side. Like I'll just know they're near. I'll see them in my head, or I'll hear their name or something, or feel them. And I'm just like, oh, so-and-so's here. And I'll call them in sometimes, So like, I know like there's still like this personality type that's there, but it's like different than what they were on Earth, and as you said, like with your grandfather, he's been through
Yes.
these different lessons and things. And then I guess what's so wild to me is like, as we go on and get go do different things beyond our experience in the Earth realm, are we just part of our soul or spirit is hanging out as that personality for a certain amount of, I mean, if time doesn't matter in the other side, if there isn't time on the other side, I guess it's like for a certain amount of Earth time, so long as like they feel like being here, and then maybe in other dimensions they're doing other things. Like, have you
Yes.
gotten into some of this more esoteric stuff of what's going on with our souls, and specifically like from personality wise into evolving into different forms that we don't even have reference points for as humans on Earth?
1,000%. I'm always deep. Me and my partner go deep in this hole. I think ever since I started channeling, she's like, oh my gosh, like, let's go there. Like, there's so many things. I'm like, I know, right? Like, if we know this exists, then what else exists, But I think, yeah, what's interesting is that I was just actually there's like so many things coming through from spirit. I'm like, okay, I can't talk about like 1,000 things. I just had a session. They move fast too. They're moving at the speed of light and the speed of, like, it's so fast. So it's hard in a human body to keep up. But what I'm hearing is that they're wanting me to talk about this session. So I had this session recently with a client, and I was sort of amazed because I'm always learning. I'm always learning, and they're always sharing something different about the other side. And with this session, what I was shown was that someone can cross over and still like can communicate their personality through a reading to a person. And that's part of their soul. But there are other parts of their soul that are advancing in so many different ways. And I'll give you an example. So this grandmother came through, and in the physical world, she was very much like very close to her granddaughter. They were like so close. And she gave validation of her experience, of the woman she was, and like all of these different things. So beautiful. And then she said, I want to talk about this handsome man in your life. And my client said, yeah, like I'm married. I have a husband. Like, what? And then I thought, oh, this is weird. Like, maybe I'm misinterpreting something. I don't know. That's weird because the grandmother was just like, have fun and be open. And I thought, what? And then my client said, oh my God, my husband and I just opened our relationship. And there's a man that I've been talking to, a young man, like he's like a handsome man. And I've just been having, like, it's fun. It's nothing serious. And I just was like, oh my God. And she goes, that's something my grandmother would never talk about and never be open to. And what I heard from her grandmother was that my soul has opened and expanded and grown and learn on the other side. And I don't have judgment as to your life choices and the way that you want to grow and expand in your own life. I found this remarkable. I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh. And this woman was so excited. She's like, I can't wait to have this new relationship with my grandmother. Like that, it makes me so happy that she's grown in that way and that we could be open to each other in that way. So that's just like one of many things that I've heard. And I think what Spirit also has shown me that if someone, I had a soul come through who had a difficult experience being here with alcoholism, and he wasn't very nice, let's say, to certain people in his life, and was very harmful and abusive. And he had done work on his soul, which if a spirit has crossed the other side and is at a certain vibration that I hold, which is like a very high vibration, they can come through. If they haven't, they aren't able to come through me. It feels like I can hear a voice far away, but I can't make out what they're saying. So he came through, and this person was like happy to see him, but also like, he, and I knew that because he was telling me he had caused all this harm in the physical world and all the stuff that he had done. And he said that his part of his soul is able, because of the healing that he's done, he's able to come and protect this person's children in the physical world and protect them from anything of getting hurt or anything and being there. And there are other parts of his soul that are still getting worked on the other side. And so, because her biggest fear was that he was a negative energy that was going to be around her and her family and her kids. And before the words even came out of her mouth, he said, I just want to let you know, this is the aspect of my soul that is around you and your children. And these aspects I'm still working on. So I find, I'm just like, what? I think the possibilities are endless. And I do think some souls also can go back. So if, for example, my grandmother lately has been further away, and I tuned in to ask her what's been going on, and she's been doing work in other realms. And so she hasn't been as close to me, but when I call upon her, she's like right here. So that's new for me. She's usually was like very close at the beginning of my mediumship journey and my learnings and teachings and all these things. And it seems like once I could kind of be on my own, she kind of she feels like she's doing bigger works in other realms. But also we can always call them back in by just thinking about them, or, cooking or things like that. But I find that really interesting that they can be in so many different dimensions at once, working on so many different things.
That is really cool. And oh, wow. That I think I hope that what you just shared there, especially about the uncle, and that aspect is the one hanging out with them and not all the other aspects. I hope that brings some sort of ease or relief to so many people who are concerned about their relatives who have passed, who are not pleasant people, or who were even harmful or violent people in this life, but that on the other side there is room and space for them to grow and to only come through with certain aspects. And I really like how you said that, as a medium, only those spirits which are able to match your vibration or higher can come through. And that's interesting. I'm not familiar. I have not formally studied mediumship or anything, so I don't know if that's like something that is for every medium, or I mean, I know there's just something there about like, almost even around like boundaries of personal energetic boundaries of like, what are we allowing to come through, of what matches us or higher vibration. I mean, and maybe that's a more earthly thing you want to talk about for a second.
Yeah. I think it's a really good, so that's a choice, right? That's a choice. And that's why I say there's so many different media.
The choice is are you specifically choosing and setting an intention that only those spirits that are your vibration or higher come through?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So that's a choice that I make for those vibrations to come through only at the highest vibration that I'm operating at. And there are so many different, like it's a spectrum. It's so not binary when it comes to different levels of spirits and different levels of their soul. And it's really not a hierarchy. When I say like highest vibration, it's not like I'm above everyone else. It's like there are different souls that are just operating on different levels. There are some souls who I haven't had come through, but other mediums have, that are not remorseful, that are not sorry for what they've done. We would call that low level, right? In the same way, in the physical realm, when someone's like, I'm not sorry I did it. Whoa, it's like a whole different energy field. And especially when it comes to violence, like I'm not sorry for what I did. And so I actually think when I think about my personal boundaries and my spiritual boundaries, they're exactly the same now. And I struggled for a long time with this, and I couldn't figure out why I was like, in my physical world, like it's so hard. And I say a boundary, but then I bend on it, or I don't really honor it. And then I'm like angry. I'm like, why did I meant no, And I asked my spirit guides for guidance actually in my dreams every night. And I said, please help me train in what it is to have boundaries. And what I got was very intense dreams, which I would say would borderline scary. And I don't watch scary movies. I don't watch scary things. Like, it's just not my thing. And yet in the realm of dreamings, it's interesting because it pulls upon our own psyche and our own fears and all the things. And somehow spirit uses all of these things. And it seems scary. And I always am like, this is so weird to say, but what I was confronted with was my biggest fear, and then needing to confront a boundary around that. Like every night I was like different dreams about that. I was like, oh, this is hard. And yet every time I was like a little bit like, confident, a little bit more confident. And I would really assert myself. And by the end I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. So I went from the spiritual realm to the physical realm. And then I asserted boundaries here in a really loving way. Just like, yeah, so this is where I'm at. This doesn't work for me, or this doesn't feel good, or just being really clear. And once I did that, everything like sort of changed. I wasn't attracting this sort of chaotic energy, this dramatic energy, all those other energies, right, that are coming into my own life in the same way that I'm not attracting spirits who are on different levels, who might be going through really different things and experiences. And also I feel like I don't have the capacity as a medium to work with those who are on those lower levels. Some mediums have incredible strength and groundedness to be able to stay in those low levels and hold their own energy. my energy feels very sensitive. So I just know that about myself. And that's why I only call in the highest vibrations to come through. But yeah, that was a learning journey to be able to actually work on both my boundaries here and my boundaries there, in the same way that I don't allow spirit to wake me up at night. I very clearly have boundaries with them. In the same way, I'm like, hey, please don't bother me at the grocery store. I just want to buy my groceries, you know? And they're super respectful, but if you don't have any boundaries or you're afraid to assert boundaries, they're just going to come. They're just going to do the same thing. In the same way, in the physical realm, someone is just going to keep taking, right, from you. If you don't say, please stop, no, this isn't how it goes. And so I learned that big time doing this work. And I think it's important for everyone.
Cool. Yeah. Shauna is a medium and is constantly dealing with spirits that are coming, and she's like, I don't want to talk to you right now. I don't want to talk. She's like, no, get out of space. Get out of space. No, get out. It's like, I'm so grateful I am not that type. I'm like, whew. I mean, it's a gift, but oh my gosh, how frustrating, but having those boundaries and learning those boundaries is really key if you've got this kind of spirit connection coming and you don't want to be engaging with dead people all the time.
Yeah, and I would say they're mostly respectful. There are times where they do come in pretty strongly, and I feel like I have to say something, and I only let them do that when it's like, it's important. This message is really important for this person. And then I always ask, like, there's someone coming through. Do you want to hear from them? Because they'll come in at odd times and I'm like, it can be really distracting and I won't be able to concentrate, in the interview or session or meeting or whatever, because they're pulling my focus. And or they're like making me feel, how someone died, and I don't even know who it is, but I literally just feel how they died through my body as if I had what they had. And that is like, I have to respond when it's something like that, because it's overwhelming. And like, it feels like I'm going to die, but I'm not, but that's what it feels like. So yeah, boundaries.
Real fun. Oh my gosh.
Fun.
Oh my gosh. I feel like, we need to have you back and have Shauna on the show to talk to, because I feel like Shauna would have such a different insight than me, because Shauna experiences this every day versus my channeling gift is with plants. And I'm like, whew. It's weird. And it's very challenging to ever validate, except for just trusting and knowing that 10 years of being aware of this, I'm like, okay, I trust it. It took a while, but
I feel that you have like an intuitive conversation with plants all the time, it feels like.
Right, there's just some nature spirit plant thing going on and I'm here for it, but I feel like everyone's got their different spirit gifts, and it's so cool to see people waking up and getting to use them and to share them. And ultimately I feel like across the spectrum, and what you said earlier, what it's all about is love, is like this, letting this love come through and bringing love into the places where it has been forgotten.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. We are so much more than these bodies. We are so much more. And I feel like there's so much power that we each hold in so many unique ways from the souls of our spirits. Like it is so important. If there's one thing I'd want people to feel, it's just like that power. It is so beyond anything we can imagine. And we touch it often. We hear like a really good song, or we're like dancing wildly, or, we feel great pleasure, or we make love, or all of these ways we feel that coursing and that energy. That energy is the existence of life. That's how all of this is created. So I feel like I just want to leave like people with that feeling, that it is us. We are it. We are all connected to it. And that love is the basis of everything.
Thank you. Mic drop. Woo!
It's all spirit.
just channeling through. Just a vessel. Well, I'm really, really so excited to have you come do a workshop with us in the collective. Yes. Whoa, we're so lucky. Can you just share a little bit about what, just a few, you don't have to get too deep, but just share a few appetizers for folks about what we're going to be doing in that workshop, what they're going to learn and experience.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to offer this. I like the title was really fun. I feel like it came right from spirit, talking about dead won't make you dead, and how and how to connect. How connecting with spirit really brings us more aliveness in our own lives, and yeah, my intention is to really have us ground in ritual together. That's like the utmost foremost thing that I love to do, is bring people into ritual and into practice together, and being able to call in all of our ancestors as we're guided through what it is to die, what comes up when we think about death, what does that mean to us, and then what does it actually mean to deepen relationship into that. So instead of like the kind of backing away, or like, I don't want to go there, or I'm not ready, or I'm not even dying, but what it is to like dive into that. Because what I find is that grief and praise come up for people who go into this work and really want to dive in. And I find that even through the tears, there's this alleviating breath of like, yeah, okay, right. We're all going to die. It's all coming. For some of us, it's like soon. For some of us, it's like maybe when we're 100, who knows? But being able to really start that conversation now by way of like practices and rituals that we can incorporate, so that it becomes a way of like being in our lives. And spirit, and working with spirit while doing that, is so powerful, so powerful. So my prayer is always that this offering and these offerings are never just a one-off of like, that was a great workshop, but instead like, wow, I want to pause maybe for like 5 minutes a day and just contemplate my death, and the death of this plant, and the death of the environment, and the death of my friend, and the death of my beautiful little animal, companion. But being able to really be and grieve with those pieces are so important, because they bring so much aliveness and fullness to our life now. So that's a little bit about what we'll be stepping into together.
Beautiful. Thank you. And what do you offer, and where can people find you?
Yeah. So people can find me on sovereignspiritdeathcare.com or Instagram at sovereignspiritdeathcare. And right now I'm offering one-on-one sessions around death care, and supporting those that are actively dying, and also those who are wanting to deepen a relationship with their own death. And they're just basically one-on-one sessions where we'll get into ritual and practice together on a continued basis, and sort of arc off of each other, ways to incorporate these practices in our everyday life. It's more personal, it's more intimate. And I'm also offering grief tending too. This is a new offering that I just came with from Spirit. There is so much ask about grief from everyone. I have so many people writing in about grief. Like, how do I tend the grief of this time? How do I be in this time of collapse? How do I be in this time of things just like falling? And how do I move it through the body so that I can like actually move forward and not be like frozen in my life because there's so much grief. So those are one-on-one sessions as well, where we'll just work together, being able to tend grief and what that means to hone that skill that most of us are never taught in this life. So that's offering. And then I'm doing readings right now. For folks, 15-minute readings, and those can be booked also through my website. Yeah. And I am, because of COVID, I was offering in-person bedside care, which is when I meet with people in hospice and meet with people in their homes as they're dying, to be able to assist them in processing their own death. But because what's going on right now with the variants, that's on hold until we can see what unfolds. But for right now, everything is virtual. And it's been really potent, surprisingly, to be virtual on Zoom with these offerings. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, of course, as always, those links are in the show notes there. And yeah, I really can't wait to see you again and hang out with our collective and get down with some death talk. It's great.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
Our pleasure. Thanks for being our guest.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free Earthspeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.